So today I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about surface lures. Now I have a few people message me every now and then asking certain questions about surface lures. Some people are fairly new to them, some people find it hard to catch on them, some people absolutely love them. For me, it's my favourite style of bass fishing. Lure fishing for bass with surface lures, for me, you can't beat it. Now, a lot of people ask, am I doing it right? What sort of retrieve do you do? Do you do a fast retrieve, medium, slow? Which surface lures do I use? Which ones work? Now, this isn't a video about which surface lures are best. Everybody has their own preference. They do different things, or slightly different things for different conditions. Some are better in very calm conditions, some are a bit better when it's a little bit rough or choppy. So it's really not a video about which ones are best. It's just talking to you a little bit about, talking to any beginners about how you really work them, what the sort of best technique is. So I'm going to go through a couple of things today, and yeah, I hope it helps. So we're into the first week of June now, and we're coming up to prime time for using surface lures for bass. Now, I actually had my first bass off the top a few days ago, less than a week ago. Only a small one, but it was the first of the year. Now, I would say predominantly using surface lures for bass fishing is more effective in the summer, the warmer months, when the bass are more active. That's not to say that you can't use them all year round though. Over here in Guernsey, we're very lucky. Our bass fishing goes all the way through the year. And if the conditions are right, I won't hesitate on throwing a surface lure out. I know many guys who catch in the coldest months of the winter, even in snowy conditions on one occasion, which a friend of mine told me about. So it just goes to show, if they're there and they're hungry, yeah, they're gonna hit it. Now, obviously, in the colder months and in certain situations, it helps to slow your retrieve down. Some people like to crank a surface lure. Me personally, I like to work it with a lot of twitches, a lot of pauses. Obviously, surface lure fishing for things like tuna and things like that, you're doing a very fast retrieve, and really there's not too much action in the rod tip. You're just literally retrieving the lure, so it's skimming across the surface. Now, tuna are obviously one of the main predators in the sea, so they're going to hit things like that. Personally, I find with bass, you know, we mustn't forget, at the end of the day, bass are scavengers. They're looking for an easy target, an easy meal. Sometimes they don't even like to work for it. And as we all know, bass will eat pretty much anything under the sun, or in the sea, I should say. So what I find is doing a sort of slow to medium retrieve with a lot of pauses can be really effective for your bass fishing. What does happen sometimes is you'll get a swell behind the lure, and the bass is either coming up and it's shying away from it for some reason, or it just misses the lure. If this happens, it can be really effective to just stop the lure dead in its tracks. Now, when you're working the lure on the surface of the water, if that lure was a real bait fish, an injured bait fish, or a fish fleeing from something, if a bass comes up and tries to hit it, it's more likely going to stun that fish. This is why stopping the lure just dead in its tracks can be really effective, because 9 times out of 10 that bass will come back and it will hit it, and you can get some incredible takes even from smaller fish. So yeah, that's 1 or 2 pointers about surface lures. Now, I'll get a few in the water. It's lovely conditions for a surface lure today, so this video isn't really about I'm here to target a bass specifically. I'm definitely not going to say no if I do hook into one. It's more so just to get a few casts away, show you how to work them. For anybody who's just interested or hasn't got much experience with surface lures, I can guarantee once you get your first bass off the top, it will be a very good rush, and yeah, you'll soon get addicted. It is so much fun. So I just have a couple of lures with me today. At the moment on my rod I have the Patchinko 140. This is a fairly new lure that I've just recently bought. I've used the 140 many times before, but this is a new colour which came in the post a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, I actually had a small bass on this about 3 or 4 days ago. Now, the Patchinko is personally my favourite lure. I would say the Patchinko 125 and 140 are probably my favourite bass lures of all time. They're incredible fun to use, and they're really effective. They work really well. You can work them slow, a bit faster. You can even use them they're used for other species all over the world. There's the smaller versions, the bigger versions. I tend to stick to the 125 and the 140. Now, obviously, like I just said, that's the 140. This is 28 grams. The 125, meaning it's just 12.5 centimeters, 140 being 14 centimeters. This is the Ghost Lancon, so it's sort of a sand eel color. And yeah, this lure is absolutely fantastic. I mean, mine's a little bit damaged now, but I've had many bass on this, and yeah, they're great fun to use. Now, the other one I have with me is the IMA Salt Skimmer. Again, this is a really good lure. Haven't had too many fish on this actually, mainly because I use the Patchinko quite well most of the time. But yeah, again, really good lure, cast really well. This is in a mullet color, and yeah, they're fantastic lures also. The only other one I have with me today is a smaller version. This is 10 centimeters, but still weighing 20 grams, so cast like a bullet. This is the Salty Dog from Jackfin. And again, yeah, these come in huge, like over a foot long, and they use them for tuna and all sorts of different species all over the world. But they made this smaller version, and I only got this last summer, and I think the first or second time I used it, I caught a few bass on it, so I was really impressed with it. This one doesn't have a rattle, it's a silent lure, but yeah, it works really well, and obviously imitates a smaller bait fish in the water. Now, on very calm conditions like today, my go-to lure would be probably one of the Patchinkos, either the 125 or the 140. It would all depend on how far I wanted it to get. If I wanted the heavier version, obviously I'd clip that on. Now, like I said before, this video isn't about which lures are the best or anything like that. There are many different surface lures out there, and some people swear by different ones. What I will say though is when the conditions are a little bit more choppy, you do want a little bit of a heavier lure in the water. Now, don't be put off by it. It doesn't have to be flat calm to use a surface lure. Lures like the Savage Gear Panic Prey, which I don't actually have with me right now, can be fantastic when the conditions are quite rough. I personally like the all white color, and it's, you know, it never ceases to surprise me that bass will hit those lures, a bright white lure in surf, in white frothy surf. I mean, how they see it, I really don't know, but they can be really good in yeah, choppy conditions, in swell, all sorts of scenarios like that. So it doesn't have to be flat calm water for you to use a surface lure. Ideally, it's actually a bit better to have a bit of chop on the water, because then it gives the bass a little bit of cover also. So I'm going to start today by using the Patchinko 140. Now, this is an incredible lure. It weighs 28 grams. They cast really well, and they've got a fantastic action to them. Now, all there is to it, you just cast the lure out, and you can just leave it for a second or two, because if there are any bass in the area, they're going to be paying attention to that splash straight away. And then you can start your retrieve, just a slow to medium retrieve, and you're just tapping the rod tip, and this gets the lure working really well in the water. What it does is it kind of slaloms through the water side to side, and you're just imitating either an injured bait fish or a fleeing fish. Now, I like to put a few pauses in there, and you can really vary the range of them from a few seconds to even up to 10 seconds long. So out we go with the lure. Just need to wind in the slack, and then once you feel it tighten up, you can start working it. Now, I'm holding the rod tip fairly high because obviously I'm quite close to the level of the sea. So by holding the rod tip high, not only do you get the lure working properly, you also keep the line out of the water so it doesn't get caught in any weed, tangled up. And you want to keep in contact with that lure as much as you can. So I've just hopped over the other side of the rocks because the wind's turned a little bit and I was actually ended up casting straight into the wind over there. So I've just come over here to give a few flicks and yeah, go through like the rod tip action and a few things like that. So I hope any of this can yeah, be of some good information for any of you beginners out there. So once I've cast the lure out, I like to leave it just for a couple of seconds. Now obviously if there's any bass around, they're going to be attracted to the noise of that splash and hopefully pay a bit of attention to it. Now you can start your retrieve, like I've said, just by giving a few taps in the rod, just like that, with a slow to medium retrieve. Now I will admit, on camera it looks like you're winding the lure a lot faster than you actually are. The lure is just sort of slaloming across the surface, imitating that wounded fish. And yeah, give plenty of pauses. Now, there's actually a really strong current here, so it's whipping the lure right around. So I'll try and get a cast away straight in front of me there. Should be a little bit less tide. So lure goes out, bail arm over as soon as it hits the water, wind in your slack, and once you tighten up on it, you can start working that rod tip. Now it doesn't matter too much about how you're holding the rod. Obviously if you're holding it high like this and you're tight to the lure, it keeps your line out of the water, gives you a good contact with it. Plus also if a fish does hit it, you're ready to strike into it already. So that can be a huge help sometimes. You can lower the rod tip to more of a horizontal angle and just work it like that. And then when the lure gets closer to you, just lower the rod tip down and continue doing exactly what you're doing. And you can work the lure all the way to your feet. Now this tide is super strong here, so it's taking the lure from my left to right. But I just wanted to find an area really where there wasn't too much wind noise. As you can see, it's flat calm. And that's all there is to it really. Now there are videos on my channel. I think there's a playlist even of top water fishing for bass. So a lot of bass caught on surface lures. So there's other handy tips in there. So if you want to check those out, just yeah, like I said, there's a playlist on the channel. Now another thing you can do with these lures, like I've just said, there's a lot of tide that runs through here, is when you are fishing somewhere with a strong current and you're using a surface lure, if you tighten up to it, I just tighten up to the lure now, tighten up to it as much as you can. Obviously the lure's just drifting, you can just let it drift with the tide and give it a couple of knocks. You don't even have to retrieve. So I can just see it drifting in the tide there. So you can just give 1 or 2 winds and you're just winding in the slack. Give it a couple twitches. So that's going to do it for today. I hope that provided a little information for any beginners out there, or anybody who's just not that familiar with using surface lures. Obviously for the avid bass angler, you guys are going to know how to do it already. Everybody has their own techniques, different ways of working them, but yeah, just to cover some of the basics, which I hope that this video does, and help a few people out, because like I said, I do get quite a few people ask me, especially more so in the summertime, a lot of questions about surface lures, or they're saying I'm doing this, that and the other and I just can't catch any bass. It took me a little while to get my first off the top, so just stick with it, believe in what you're doing, keep watching videos on YouTube. Different people will show you different things, and it's surprising, just the smallest things sometimes can be really beneficial for your bass fishing. So anyway, I hope that yeah, covers everything that people have been asking me. Thanks very much for watching the videos. I'm going to be out doing a lot of bass fishing over the summer, and hopefully get some on the top water lures. So once again, thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and I'll see you on the next one.